Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I had a subscriber ask me a question, which I'm going to flip in here for you guys. And I find it a little amusing because what we're going to go into with this question is not so much answering his question, but discussing the mentality involved. And he basically asked me, hey, why did you do full range of motion deadlifts? You could do rack pulls out of a rack, cut the range of motion down, and overload your back even more to remove some of the hamstring from it. So let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing. Let's do a little bit of crafting and let's talk about this. All right, this is an interesting mentality because this is a case of when you think about it, this is one of the many examples that you see out there of people intentionally going out of their way to create muscle imbalances. Because what is a muscle imbalance? A muscle imbalance is where you have muscles that are disproportionately stronger than others in a way that when you go to do some function or movement in the real world, that something gets overloaded and some joint gets loaded incorrectly and hurts you. All right? People oftentimes think of those muscle imbalances as things like, front to back, such as your quads are too weak for your hamstrings, therefore your knees get damaged. Your knees have less stability. Therefore, when you're on a playing field or running or sprinting or turning the wrong way, you either tear a hamstring, right? You tear a hamstring or you damage your knee joint. That's a muscle imbalance. But when you think about it, muscle imbalances can exist within a kinetic chain as well. And that's a perfect example. Why would in the world would you ever want to remove your posterior chain from the deadlift? A lot of people look at the deadlift and say, there's a lot of partial movements in the deadlift. You're against partials. Why are you so big on the deadlift? Well, because the deadlift moves so many muscles through at least some range of motion, even a static contraction that puts an enormous stress on it, that it makes so many muscles in your body grow and get stronger that it's insane. And because it's a natural, normal movement, have to pick an object up from a floor to move it is something that you will very much encounter in the real world. It is something we as humans have had to do a lot. Pick up a tree, pick up a rock, pick up a person, pick up something and carry it. Move it in groups. The deadlift is a very natural movement pattern you're very likely to use in the same partials that you train it in, right? Having to pick up something heavy from the floor. The problem is there's a whole kinetic chain involved. And if you intentionally go out of your way to shorten the range of motion on it further in such a way that you're less likely to find it useful, you're like, I want my upper back to be stronger than my posterior chain and hamstrings. You're intentionally creating a muscle imbalance, so that increases the chance of injuring you. And it seems like people want to create muscle imbalances purely for the purpose of adding isolation movements in. Meaning, you see it all the time. How many dudes go, oh yeah, man, you need to try to find a way to use your biceps less on your rows, right? So that your arms hang like hooks. Well, that also requires you to use straps, because how are you going to grip a 300-pound weight or even a 200-pound weight loosely and let it hang and row with it? You can't. All right, so number one, they're having you take your forearms out of the equation so that you can use, by using straps, so that you can use less biceps. So you're removing the forearm, you're trying to reduce the amount on the radial brachialis, and then you're trying to make the arms hang loose so that you can get less bicep growth from your rows. And that seems like the weirdest thing in the world. You'll see bodybuilders talking about that. I thought bodybuilders all wanted big arms. That they would try to go out of their way to take an exercise that the normal muscle balance and the normal range of motion on any sort of pull with your back has to use the biceps. The biceps have to get recruited. They will grow. They will get bigger and stronger from it. It is impossible for them not to. All right? And anyone who says that that's not true, sorry, you just failed basic human anatomy. You failed basic human anatomy if you believe that barbell rows do not make your biceps bigger and stronger. Okay? If you honestly believe that, you just failed basic human anatomy. You will fail a freshman college course on human anatomy. You won't be able to pass it. You're not smart enough because you can't make the bicep not work during the exercise. But they want you to try to make the bicep work less. And I'm like, I thought bodybuilders were all about big arms. Why in the world would they want to intentionally get smaller, weaker arms? Why would they do that? Why not let the biceps go ahead and grow with the back? That's your natural movement. So then you're going to create a situation to where your biceps are weaker when you're pulling something, so that you're going to have a weakness in the kinetic chain if you tried to learn to hang with it with the wrists, the your hands like hooks so that the biceps get involved as little as possible, which is impossible, but you're still trying to make them weaker and smaller. Then so they can go do extra curls afterwards. Like, are they intentionally doing that so that they can just grow smaller biceps? That's the only thing that makes any sense. Why? Your back isn't going to grow less because the biceps get involved. In fact, if the biceps have to work harder, you're going to get stronger. You're going to move more weight. Your back is going to be subjected to more load. Why not just let your biceps get big and strong so that they don't become a limiting factor? How about the forearms the same way? So then they're going to strap up on these rows because the forearms need to get used less. The only way they can have their arms hang like hooks to try to get the less bicep recruitment they want is to use straps so they can't grip the weight hard. So now your forearms and your grip are going to be weaker. So now when you go to pull anything or pick anything up, you're going to have a pussy grip. You're basically got muscle all through your back that you can't use because you're a weak pussy on your grip and you can't grip anything. So you've just created a bunch of useless muscle intentionally and created more work for yourself to do it. You had to buy a device to do it. And then on top of it, they'll go behind and go, wow, my forearms suck. Now I need to isolate my forearms more. So they're intentionally taking a big compound that should make all types of muscles grow in their body and intentionally creating a muscle imbalance that will require them to do more isolation movements, will require them to buy a set of straps, and will create inherent muscle balances in their kinetic chain. So that even if they get the muscles all caught up, their body still doesn't know how to use it as one unit. So they've worked harder, spent more money, and got less results for it. And they've still ended up being weaker in the real world than had they just done it correctly. It baffles the fucking mind. Like, what are people thinking? Why would you ever try to remove muscles from an exercise? A big compound movement that makes 2 or 3 or 4 major muscles grow, you want to take muscles out of the equation. You're trying to remove them so they grow less. That creates muscle imbalances. Anything that makes you use a major mover less on a natural, normal movement, such as pulling, pushing, pulling from the floor, squatting something up, pushing something up over your head. Intentionally removing things from the kinetic chain creates muscle imbalances that can cause you to actually get injuries later. It's like this whole bodybuilder idea of the body being a stack of Legos it's not supposed to work together is insane. It's in complete denial of the way the human body works. No wonder they need so many fucking drugs to get muscles. This mentality holds them back. It reduces development and it causes them to get hurt. Think about it with a lot of these exercises. Oh, you want to do this so you can try to remove the tricep more from your bench press. Well, I thought everyone wanted big triceps. It's not like you're not going to build a massive chest if you get really strong on your chest presses. If you get really strong on them, your chest is still going to get big. It's still going to get strong. Why would you try to find ways to avoid using the triceps? Well, let me skip the lockout so the triceps don't grow as much. So I have to do extra tricep work now because my triceps are weak because I tried to take them out of the chest presses. So my chest got the same growth it would have gotten had I done the exercise correctly. But I want weaker triceps and smaller triceps now just so I can have an excuse to go do tricep extensions, to do more of them than I was going to have to do. Oh, and then they're not trained to work as one unit, so when I really do have to push something, my body isn't as good at it. Because I haven't trained the motor patterns and for the triceps to know they're supposed to recruit maximally with the chest at the same time. Wow. It's like, where do these guys come up with these ideas? Like, in what world do they think that anyone is helping themselves by intentionally creating a muscle imbalance? That's what all this stuff does. A lot of these partial reps create muscle imbalances. Trying to find ways to recruit major muscles in a compound movement creates muscle imbalances. And it's like they want to recruit muscles less so that they have more excuses to go isolate them later. Well, if you used them correctly and you did all the big exercises correctly and actually used your arms on your rows and used your arms on your bench press, you wouldn't have to put as much synthol and shit in your arms. You wouldn't have to do 37 sets of curls because they would get most of their growth from doing your chest and back work. Same thing. All these guys want to use belts for everything. They want to use machines instead of exercises where they stand on their feet. Instead of doing a standing overhead press, instead of doing squats, instead of doing deadlifts without belts, they want to avoid all of that stuff so they can create muscle imbalances and have a weak core so they can go spend an extra hour every week training their core separately to try to get their core built up correctly. Intentionally creating muscle imbalances. It's insane. It's literally insane, and it makes no sense whatsoever that people think this way. And then they wonder why they have to spend so much time in the gym to get any sort of size. Because they're intentionally getting less muscle and creating imbalances that they have to put in extra work to try to fix later. It's like, you know what? If you don't create a problem in the first place, you don't have to invest effort and energy into fixing a problem that doesn't exist. Why not just not create the imbalance to begin with? Why not just do everything correctly the first time so that these imbalances are less likely to develop and less likely to exist, so you have to do less work to correct them? That's not called being lazy. That's called being smart. That's called not being a dumbass. Think about it, guys. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.